Hello and welcome to the Tennessee Golden Hour. My name is Matt Tullis.
And I'm Beth Moore.
It's great to see you, Beth.
It's good to see you, Matt. It's been a minute since we've done
Yes,
one of these.
it's been a while, but we spent a lot of time with 800 of our closest friends at the summit, and a great time there. I'm still trying to catch up from all the load in and load out and conversations.
Yes.
I'm an introvert, and so it took about 15 hours of sleep for me to get over that.
Yes. I drove home in complete silence and just enjoyed the quiet.
Me too. No podcast or anything. I just wanted to hear my engine hum and pray that my tires would not be flat. So it was good. Beth, I'm really excited about this conversation that we're going to have. As you can see from this picture now, we have the Hollywood Squares, except it's more like the Tennessee Squares of pastors. Our first I would call this Young Pastors Forum. And so we've got some great guys. I tell you what, let's just go down the road and I'll just kind of pitch it to each one of you. And if you could let's begin by finding out about who you are. Let's start with Matthew.
Yes, I'm Matthew Daniel, and I am the pastor at First Baptist Church of Whitwell, Tennessee, about 40 minutes outside of Chattanooga. I've been here since 2020, and I am married to my wife, Kendall, and we also got married in 2020 and then moved here that very same year. And we have a 10-month-old little girl. She is the joy of our lives. And it's been a really great journey here. I love being involved in the Tennessee Baptist Convention, and the Lord has his hand on our convention of churches in a great way, and love being able to network with folks like are on this call as we're all on mission together.
Yeah. And Beth, I don't know if you've seen his gold suit.
I have, in fact, seen his gold suit. I love it.
And I tell you what, I'm putting it up on the screen right now so everybody can see it. Tell us a story about that.
Okay, so it originally started even before the gold suit. There was a time during my first year here, second year here, during the Lottie Moon Christmas offering season, that there was a Facebook post that started with one of my church members that said, "Get your pastor a suit for Christmas." And all of a sudden, everybody just started kind of piling on that, like, yeah, we need to get him this, give him this. And so then my wife jumped on and said, "Hey, do I get a say in this?" And then she said, "How about this? If we exceed Lottie Moon, then he'll wear that crazy Christmas suit." And so sure enough, that happened. Well, then I decided to kick it up a notch. And I was like, well, for the golden offering, let's get a gold suit. So that happened. I think it was October of 2022. And so then all of a sudden, we exceeded. I walked out on stage in the gold suit, and then I decided to bust it back out again this year. And but I am happy to announce that it has been able to increase our gold offering giving each year. I'll say to my church, I make you a deal. If we exceed golden, I'll break back out the gold suit. And
that's awesome.
It's been a lot of fun, but I always remind them that even as this is just a fun thing that we do, it's a joy to know that all of our mission dollars are going to go to help gospel impact and ministry across Tennessee.
So that's great. Jason?
Yeah, my name is Jason Pounds. I'm the senior pastor of First Baptist Church Sweetwater. So we're in East Tennessee, kind of going south of Knoxville if you're headed to Chattanooga. And so I've been there for almost 3 years. Interesting story. I used to be their actual youth pastor 16 years ago, left and did seminary education and pastored another church. And then they actually called me and they asked me, would I ever be willing to come back and pastor? And I said, sure, throw my name in the hat. And just the Lord brought us back there. And it really has been a joy, not only for me, but for my family. My wife is Erica Pounds. We've been married for almost 18 years, and we've got 4 boys. Our oldest is 13, and we've got a 10-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 5-year-old. And so they definitely keep us busy, but it is a joy to be able to pastor there and to raise a family there. So,
amen. Carter?
My name is Carter Carroll. I am the senior pastor at Hopewell Baptist Church in Savannah, Tennessee. It's in West Tennessee, about an hour southeast of Jackson. I came on staff in 2016, became senior pastor in 2021. This is actually my home church. I went to undergrad and then did a couple of years on campus of seminary, and finishing up online. I'll be done this semester after starting in 2014. So it's been a long haul, but the finish line is very close. So moved back here intending on finishing online, moving away. And that was not the route God had for us. And so my wife, Amber, and I, we've been married 10 years, and we have 5 boys, 7, 6, 4, 2, and 6 months. So I'm going gray fast. So I will not be.
Amen, brother.
I may be young in age, but I'm about to be old in anxiety pretty soon. So happy to be a part of Tennessee Baptist. I don't think I really had a full appreciation for what it means to be a Tennessee Baptist until really I became senior pastor. And I can just go on and on about my Harvest Field leader, other guys in the state. Just it's been incredibly impactful to know that I've got relationships and guys praying for me and people who've been there before and people I can call.
That's great. Brandon, you'll round us up.
Sure. So I'm Brandon Johns. I'm the pastor at First Baptist Soddy Daisy. I've been here about 7 years, came in 19 or almost 7 years, came in 19, and we love it here. I'm married to Mary Elizabeth. We've been married about 18 years. Jason, we have 3, a 13, a 10, and a 5. We just don't have the 7. So we're close there. But so we've got a 13 and a 10-year-old, both boys, and then our 5-year-old little girl we actually adopted last year from Columbia. So it's good to be on here. I love being in Tennessee. I love being a part of Tennessee Baptist. I love being a part of the mission board and all sorts of fun stuff, getting to know everybody here, and just really appreciate what's going on here in the state.
That's great. Beth, you want to start us off?
Yeah, well, I would love to hear. I mean, you all have told us where you are, but I would love to hear from one or all of you about your call to ministry. I think as we are seeing the ministry pipeline shortage, that maybe we have a lot of people that don't even know if they're called into ministry. So how did you know that the Lord was calling you to be a pastor?
Yeah, so I have the privilege of growing up in a pastor's home. In fact, my dad's getting ready to retire from over 40 years of ministry. And so I grew up in a home that was in ministry. And so I kind of had that. And I think just through that and the impact that my dad had on me, I kind of wrestled through a call to ministry. Always thought it might be something that I would do just because ministry was a family affair for us. We were always involved in my dad's ministry. And so I think just that idea was planted on very early. But then I think what really confirmed it for me was, believe it or not, my youth pastor. My youth pastor played a huge part in my calling and in my discipleship. Had a fantastic youth pastor who I think recognized my call before I did. And so he began to foster that without telling me that, which was great. And so he gave me opportunities to serve in youth ministry, lead out in youth ministry. And then specifically, if y'all remember these, I went to a Dawson McAllister conference. Does anybody remember those?
Yes.
So I went to a Dawson McAllister conference in Florida. And that's actually where I kind of walked down, surrendered to my call, met with my youth pastor afterwards and told him I felt called to ministry. And he goes, "What took you so long, to figure that out?" So I surrendered to a call when I was 12. And then I had a youth pastor, a dad, and other pastors who not only fostered that, but I think confirmed it. They were able to look at me and say, "Hey, I see that gifting. I see God's gifting in your life and can see where God is calling you and moving you." And so it was not only just an internal kind of call, but an external confirmation from pastors and mentors in a church that came alongside me and said, yes, we see this in your life and we want to encourage that and foster that. And then I had like I said, a youth pastor that gave me opportunity. Like I'll never forget the first opportunity I had to preach. I was a high school student. And I remember I prepped for weeks. I mean, just weeks. I knew this opportunity was coming up. I was speaking for a youth event. And I thought, I'm like, I'm going to probably talk for 30 minutes. That's how much material I have. And I got up and I was probably done within like 11 or 12 minutes. I mean, that was just, it was, and I look back at it, I was like, that was terrible. Like, it was a terrible sermon. It was just horrible. But the truth is like, I'm so grateful for that because I had a youth pastor that saw the gifting, but knew, yep, I needed to sharpen some things. I was going to need a lot of work. But he gave me opportunity to step into that and allow me to begin to kind of sort through that calling myself. And so I'm so grateful for those men that did that for me, which is why I think I'm doing that now with guys in our church. I just had a high school student. He's now a college student at Liberty University. And he was my pastoral intern this past summer. Spent the whole summer with him doing practical ministry and giving him opportunity to preach even on a Sunday morning and fill the pulpit. And, it's just giving him those opportunities that were also given to me that God used greatly in my calling and in my ministry. So
that's great. Brandon?
Yeah, my story is actually a lot like Jason's. I felt like I was called at a young age. Now, about 13, I started wrestling with this call. However, I originally thought I was going to be a youth minister my whole life. Like, I thought I was going to be the old guy with pants up under his armpits, completely out of touch, loving teenagers and sharing the word. But when I was 13, when God started to really put that call in my life, I rationalized everything. And I thought, well, no, I just wanted to be like my youth minister who hung out, played basketball, loved Jesus, and taught us the Bible. And I just thought I just really liked him and wanted to be like him. So I put it on the back burner. Although throughout my whole high school career, I couldn't tell you what I wanted to do. People would say, well, I want to go do this, that, or the other. And I gave the answers my parents told me to give. I want to be an engineer. I want to do this. I want to be a lawyer because, those were the things that I would throw out. But all along, I knew there was something that I was wrestling with internally. And I started about 10th grade, started meeting with my youth pastor who gave me those same opportunities. And Jason, it is invaluable. And I tried to do that now. And I've tried to do that for the 22 years I've been in ministry. I wrestled with a lot of things. I gave every excuse I knew. I talked to my pastor growing up was a third generation pastor. My dad was a fantastic man who loved the Lord and served him wholeheartedly, but he wasn't a pastor. So I used that as an excuse. I used every excuse I could. Finally, I realized I got to stop giving excuses and put my yes on the table. So I finally, after about a 4-year wrestling with it, I finally said, all right, Lord, you got me. I'm going to do what you want me to do. And that's when I said, okay, Lord, I'm going to answer this call.
That's great. Carter, I'll play a little game with you. This is going to be a stretch. Hard for you to believe that this would be true, but forget my face and say I'm an 18-year-old guy who feels called into ministry. What is one piece of advice that you might look at me as a guy about to go into college to get ready for ministry? What's one thing that you could share with me as far as an advice about being a pastor?
I would say get involved with a local church early and take whatever service opportunities they will give you. If you're really called, if you really have that burden, then it really doesn't matter what you're asked to do. I think when we all start out, we want to preach, we want to do the big stuff, but a true call to ministry, there's no age restriction on when you can start doing nursing home visits. Somebody's got to count out goldfish crackers, start anywhere. And I think that would reveal a certain humility and willingness to serve. And that I think is more important than, polished speaking skills at that point, or knowing the ins and outs of administration. If you're willing to serve the least of these, then there's a place for you in ministry.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I love that. Matthew, I'd love to hear your same thoughts on that question.
Yeah, I would say that it would be young 18-year-old guy that is looking to try to discern the call to ministry, is to seek out an older gentleman that can disciple them, especially an older pastor. I was very much impacted by my late pastor, Fred Evers, who passed away in 2020 of cancer. But getting to serve under him when I was in South Georgia, before they sent me to seminary, I went through a pastoral internship under him because he told me, there's some things that I can teach you, but then there's some things I just have to show you. And so just being able to, learn under a older, wiser gentleman in the Lord who has been walking with Jesus for a while, and also has been pastoring a while, but also too, I would say as well that it doesn't always necessarily have to be a pastor. It can be an older, godly gentleman in the church, like a lay minister, or not lay, just a layman in the church who just puts in the model well that idea of service, kind of like what Carter was talking about, that one that puts into practice godliness well and the spiritual disciplines and things like that. So I would say find an older older gentleman that has been walking with Jesus for a long time that you can learn from.
So I would ask you all, having gone to my pastor as a 17-year-old to say, hey, I feel called as a young woman into full-time ministry. I feel like the Lord is asking me to surrender to that. But what does that look like? How would you encourage young ladies in your church that are also feeling a call into some kind of full-time ministry?
Well, I would, again, are you saying at 18 they're going off to college?
Yeah, going to college. Yeah, or just like, hey, what should I do if the Lord's like leading me? I feel like the Lord's leading me into some kind of full-time ministry. Is advice any different that you would give to a young lady?
Getting with an older lady in the church that could disciple you the same way it would happen for a man.
Yeah.
And then obviously within the confines of what we as Baptists confessionally believe about the roles, there's plenty of opportunity for a young woman. Some of the godliest, smartest Christians I've ever met were the young women in my seminary classes. And then my wife would also tell you that she at some point felt called into ministry. And now she would tell you not to box that in, what that would look like. Because the way she's currently serving as a pastor's wife and youth Sunday school,
that's like definitely full-time ministry right there.
It's not exactly what she would have thought that was going to look like, but certainly one that is as fulfilling as a man's ministry would be for her.
I'll just throw this out to all of you. Could you tell us a story about a time in ministry when you felt most overwhelmed by the day-to-day as well as other things that might be going on in that week? Could you share a story?
The first church that I pastored when I was in seminary, it was a church where the guy who was there before me was someone I had known from my hometown and had discipled me once I got on campus and had recommended me for the role eventually that became interim and then became the full-time pastor. But I remember that overwhelming feeling coming that first Sunday that I was heading to do both teaching Sunday school and fill the pulpit, where I just felt on the way there just this weight crashing down of, okay, it's on me now. Like, what in the world am I doing? What in the world have I gotten myself into? And it was pretty nerve-wracking, but the Lord was so gracious and kind during that time to place it was a very small church, but a group of people around me who were very patient with me, who encouraged me, who loved me, and were patient during those times when I felt overwhelmed, and really helped relieve a lot of those burdens.
Anybody else?
I think I lasted in student ministry for 17 years because I was patient and I didn't jump on a trend necessarily. I took my time and thought through it. And that all went out the window my first month here at this church. I felt overwhelmed as far as I need to do something. I need to get something going. And I've got two brothers. They are two good brothers that I went to college with. One is a Presbyterian minister in a PCA guy up in Colorado. The other one is a Methodist guy down in Florida. And yes, it sounds like a joke anytime we're together, but we constantly talk. We're always on the phone. We have a text thread that continues. And I remember they kind of talked me down off the ledge. Like, remember what got you here. Remember what you've done. Yes, the scope is bigger or broader, wider, but you're still you, and don't try to be someone else.
Yeah, I think for me, the transition between my first pastorate, kind of lead pastorate, and where I am now, it's just, it's a little bit more administrative heavy, just because I went from a smaller congregation to a significantly larger congregation. I knew kind of, they were upfront with what I was coming into. They had voted as a congregation to basically move into a building program that eventually turns into a total relocation of the church. And they asked me, would I be willing to come in and help lead in some of that? And I said, yes. But of course, I didn't know what to expect. And at times, it is overwhelming, even now. And some of that's just from the personalities and the people that are involved in it to the task itself. It's a very large task. But the Lord is using all of those things, I think, in my own life personally, spiritually, but also pastorally, and the experiences that I'm having right now of, bringing about wisdom, teaching me a lot of things that I didn't know, from not only just pastoral, but leadership and, all those different aspects.
Well, I'd love to hear from some of you all. What is something that's happening in your church right now that has you more excited than you've been in a while?
I think what we've got going on right now is some stability on our staff. And but then also like the formation of long-term vision and starting the process of implementation of that. So we're kind of, I guess, at like the level where we've gotten several key lay people involved and on board, and it's taken a few years. Like I started in 21. Of course, I had a vision, or whatever, but you don't know what you don't know until you know that you didn't know it. And so it's really been a good time to refine and clarify what is the purpose of our church, beyond just the general mission to glorify God, but what is our specific way to do that, in our little corner of the kingdom, and how to mobilize every member. And so just seeing that infect a whole staff is fun. And then seeing key lay people catching on to it and understanding it, that's been really neat to see.
I'm excited. We see a lot of intentional mentoring and discipleship, especially with our younger generation in our church. And I think that really started with our staff. So for a year, we kind of walked through together kind of staff values and identifying some of what those are. And one of those things that we came up with was the idea of just giving away ministry. So identifying, raising up, and giving away ministry in our church. And so we've been very intentional about that. All of our staff is intentional about the way they go about that. So we've got several of our young kind of younger guys that are part of our youth band at the church, and two of them who are getting ready to graduate have expressed a call to worship ministry. And our worship pastor has been instrumental, pun intended, with that. So, and he has spent a ton of time just mentoring them. And so not too long ago, we actually had a smaller local church that was like, hey, we need somebody to come and lead our worship. Our person that's usually here is not going to be here. And so we actually took those two guys who play guitar and keyboard and that kind of stuff, and we sent them out to them. They're high school students, but they went out to this, this kind of smaller congregation and led worship for them. Came back, we got a phone call from that church, and they're like, they're amazing. Can we hire them? It was amazing to see that. There's another younger gentleman that I'm meeting with right now every single Thursday. He came to me several months ago and expressed a possible call to preach to pastoral ministry. And I said, okay, why don't we just meet every Thursday? He had time available. I had time available. And so right now we're working through preaching. We're reading books together and just spending time with him and hoping to develop him, hoping to see him kind of wrestle through his call even more, and then potentially maybe see him either continue to serve in ministry at our congregation, or God opening the door for him to go somewhere else and serve.
I'm excited to see some of our younger folks, whether high school and a couple college students, step into a servanthood kind of role in the church. Well, in a bunch of ages, and because it gives me hope for the future. And I don't know what we would do without some of our teenagers on Sundays, as we are in an aging church. They know how to do things that a lot of other people, and I'm only 33, but there's still some things that's a little bit out of my wheelhouse as well. But they are always willing to step up and to serve in every respect. And so it is something that, again, gives me a lot of hope for the future of our church, for them being willing to do that as we're seeking to pass on the baton of the gospel to the next generation.
That's awesome.
And I think for me, it's getting our folks are getting the bug of wanting to minister to the community in different ways. We have a food bank here, a weekly food bank that knocks it out of the park. Get a lot of people every week, but a lot of times that's where it stopped. And so hearing it in our planning meetings and things about, what do we want to see God do, or what does God want to do in 2026? And thinking through that, we started some other ways to minister to folks. Those people who come to get food, we're starting a dinner, a monthly dinner here on Sunday evenings, and inviting them. But the purpose is for them to interact with the rest of the church, not just those who hand in food boxes. We stopped doing our fall festival and changed it to a pie festival. And we branded it with the city's name, not ours. And just seeing a lot of people come bring, we have pie competitions, we have pie eating competitions, all sorts of stuff. But our church is getting they have a drive and a desire to do things for our community so that we can advance the gospel here, and not just come to us, but let's figure out how we can partner with things going on and around our town.
We all have misses in our ministry, and not your wives, but mistakes that we make, and we can look back on that. Like, I can look back on a time in ministry when this was like 16 years ago, and I had this great idea in a series called Leaving Egypt. And I invited people on note cards to write the things that they were going to leave behind. And then we had the grand idea of having it in a drum, and then we would light the things that they were leaving behind. And I didn't realize the fire hazard and how many things our people would leave behind. And almost burned down the church that day. But I was wondering, can you share an anecdote or a mistake that you made, whether serious or funny, or you look back on that and you just have to laugh at yourself?
This was about a year and a half ago, but I was making a point in one of my sermons about something and making sure that it was probably I think it was a part of the text where God was trying to get the attention of his people. And I used the expression and just kind of popped off and said fire. And had a couple people that kind of popped their heads up at that moment. Well, after it was over, my wife, who is a civics teacher, who is very well versed in the general statutes, she said, it's not legal for you to shout out fire in the middle of one of your sermons. And so that was a little bit of a miss, as I was just trying to make a point on that. But yeah, that was a good thing to tuck away, to never do that again. Thank God for our wives, who are much more wise.
Yes. Oh man.
At my previous church, I was preaching through Joshua 24, where he says, as for me and my house will serve the Lord. And I was talking about when he was saying, as for the people in one place, they serve this God, the other folks serve this God. And I was talking about the God Ra. And I had the whole church say his name together. And afterwards, my pastor said, you just had the whole church chant a false God's name on Sunday morning. I haven't done that since.
We had a children's program several years back, and we were just doing like light finger foods afterwards so the parents could kind of mingle and talk with them. I made the mistake of dismissing the youth first to go, and they each took about 6 cookies or chicken tenders or whatever. So by the time like the adults and the kids got over there, it was completely barren. There was no food left, and so pretty bad look. Since then, I've said I have quantity impairment now because of that. And Jesus didn't run out of food, so we shouldn't either. And so we always have leftovers whenever I'm in charge of something like that.
So never dismiss the youth first.
Never let the youth attack a cookie bar without supervision.
Yeah, the one of my first pastorate, I'll never forget. I was standing up at the end of the service. We were giving announcements, and to this day I don't know why I said this, but we were having a meeting that night in our senior adult ladies Sunday school class, and instead of calling it by its name, because we're Baptist and so we have to give names to all of our Sunday school classes, I didn't do that. I didn't even say senior adult Sunday school class. I said the old ladies Sunday school class. And you could have, like, number one, dropped a pin in the room because it was just dead silent. But then the looks on everyone's faces were just, they're now seared in my brain of like the way they looked at me. And I knew immediately, I was like, that is not what I should have said in that moment,
I feel like I need to share one. I was
Please.
when I was overseas as a missionary, my first Christmas, when I didn't know a lot of language, I wanted to make treats for all my neighbors in my apartment, and I wanted to share the gospel. So I thought, I'm going to share out of Isaiah when it lists all the names of Jesus and this baby that's coming, because this is a country that doesn't know anything about Jesus. And so did that, spoke with some people, but just had to leave some on the door. Again, I had written it out in the language. And then, over the next couple weeks, I had 2 different people say, "Oh, we're so happy. When is your baby going to be born?" And I was like, oh, they think that I would it was like my birth announcement, the single white lady living here trying to tell me about Jesus. And so that was a huge ministry fail on my part. So I'm not sure what they think ever happened.
Yeah, that's great.
Matthew, you mentioned, your wife and her wisdom. I would love to hear from you all what you have learned or are learning about balancing God's call to pastor a church, but also your role as husband and father, because you all have mentioned your kids and your families. How are you learning, or have you learned to balance all of that?
It's a one day at a time process. However, I will say that what I have learned is that my family must always come before my ministry. And doesn't mean that my ministry doesn't matter. But my first ministry, I feel like, is to my wife and my daughter. And there's a lot of things that I have to say no to from time to time in the balance. And these guys can speak into this even better than I can, having multiple kids. But what I have learned in these first 10 months of being a father is that many times you do not have the flexibility that you once had, and you really have to prioritize your time and to shepherd your family well. And because I truly believe if you don't first shepherd your family well, how are you going to be able to shepherd and lead your church well? So that's what I would say about that, is just trying to strike that right balance. But again, these guys, I think combined, have about 27 kids. So compared to me, so that we can speak into that a little bit better than I can. Yeah.
I've learned that text messages don't disappear. And so if you don't answer them right away, it's not the end of the world. I may check them, I may look at them, but typically I try to put my phone away when I get home, at least until my youngest goes to bed. And then, I may watch a show on there or something. But typically I try not to rush into answering text calls, especially on my day off.
That's good.
Mine would just be that, I do think your whole family is called into ministry of sorts. And so there's an appreciation there that, if it's 9:00 at night, I need to go to the hospital. That's understood. But at the same time, when I'm there, I need to be all there. So there will be sacrifices we have to make. But that means that you need to be on when you need to be present when you're not making those sacrifices in designated times off.
Yeah, I echo much of what Brandon, said. It's, for me, I've got to have, I guess you can say some barriers, just some, like some non-negotiables in some senses. And, sometimes, and that's just for me to be able to show up for my family, well, because I've definitely at times struggled walking into the house and, ministry is still on the brain and my kids are talking. And to be quite honest, I'm not listening, I'm somewhere else, with an issue at church or, with a conversation that took place that day with a church member or something like that. And so for me, I've had to do things like, hey, on Saturday when, it's, a day off, I will go put my phone away. There are other, mechanisms in place. If there is an emergency that comes up with a church member, there are other ways that I can get that information. And there's other people who are built into that process to even help with carrying some of that load. And so it's just, I think it's recognizing those things maybe about yourself, putting those kind of guardrails up that help you show up for your family. But then also, I think Carter's right. It's just understanding that like your calling as a pastor, like it's not a clock in, clock out job. Like it doesn't, it's not that kind of way. And so there are times that, dad's going to be called away, because he's got to go, to a hospital and sit with someone who is suffering, or there really is an important thing going on in the life of the church. And so, I've got to be there for that. And so I think it's having, correct expectations, not only for yourself and your family, but for your church as well. And letting them know that your family is your first ministry, like you're going to put them first. You're going to prioritize those things. But for my family, ministry is a family affair. I try to include them as much as I possibly can, in my ministry. And not only is that good for my boys, I think they're seeing ministry, but I'm hoping to instill in them a love for the church and a love for ministry, and not to look at it as something that took dad away from us, but something that actually helped our family, grew our family, supported our family. They have a joy for church and for ministry. So,
okay. One last thing that I was just going to kind of put a bow on this is to say, and I know this is not the case at every church, but I absolutely love my church because of the way how they love my family. And they have encouraged us and just checking in every little bit and bugging me at times to say, you need to make sure you take all your vacation Sundays. You need that time with your family. Because I would definitely agree with what's been said. It's a family affair, but it is because we're all called to ministry in that. But it is such a blessing whenever you have a church that can come alongside you and provide you and love you from it, because it really helps him.
Brandon, I think you've also, though, Jason, you said it. You've got to draw the line of what's an emergency and what's not. And be clear with your family about that from before, because if everything's emergency, nothing is. And so you got to say, like my wife knows if this happens, it means I'm going to go. If it's a little lower that, or there's some ambiguity there, I'm going to call and I'm going to have to make a judgment call at that moment. That's the beauty of having good deacons who will help me with that, who I can call and say, hey, so-and-so, this has happened. Do you think we need to go? Hey, I'm busy with my kids. Can you go? And so I think there's a ministry there that we neglect a lot of times, or we overlook, with those deacons to help that.
I'll just throw this out. You don't have to answer it, but I was wondering, just gut check right now. What is one thing you're spiritually struggling with in your ministry and in your personal life? Is there a struggle going on?
I wouldn't call it a struggle so much as just the season I'm in of, my margins are a lot smaller now, of planning and personal time, family time. And so just figuring out how to prioritize better, schedule out better. I think it was, I don't know, I've heard it said several times that the overly busy pastor is actually the lazy pastor, because he's not done the prep work beforehand. And so scheduling out, just being more disciplined with time, being more effective and efficient while working. Just understanding that there's a lot more on my plate now. And so showing up, working in the Spirit of the Lord, knowing what needs to be done and doing it well for His glory.
Yeah, I've struggled my whole life, and I will continue to struggle until the Lord takes me home or comes and gets me. I struggle with knowing I can do a lot of things in my own power, and stopping and saying, no, Brandon, you need the Lord's work in here. And so just being that constant prayer of, hey, Lord, I need you. I don't need to rely on myself.
There's certain ideas and tasks that I get in my head, and I know that they have to come, but I procrastinate and really put those things off, because you'll start one thing and then here comes another over here. And a lot of times those can kind of mount upon themselves. So there's a couple that I can think of in recent memory to where there's a few things I know I have to get done, but the procrastination bug can kind of hit at times and kind of cause an issue, and it goes into the prioritization as well of the schedule. So I'd say right now, with a few things, procrastination probably would be a struggle.
Yeah, I'm going to echo a lot of what Carter said. And a lot of it has to do with the season of life that my family's in. With 4, kids, and mine are of the age where they're all now active in sports and school activities, and and between the 4 of them, that's a full-time schedule to keep up with, plus just what's going on at the church. And so I think it's just a managing well of those things so that you can show up well for those things. And not show up, I think, like what you guys said, in your own strength and your own power, just like, hey, I can get this done, versus actually showed up prepared, your heart prepared, your mind prepared, to lead well in those things and to show up well in them. And then knowing when to sometimes just say no. My church is in a very busy season right now with buildings and, and there's almost every Thursday there's like a meeting, every Thursday night. And it's around building, stuff. And there have been times where, honestly, you know what, I've said no. There were plenty of people in that room that were wise enough, godly enough, and had far greater expertise in those matters than I did. And at that point, my family needed, me, I needed to be somewhere else. And so I've had to learn to say, you know what, we've got other leaders that can take care of that. And that's also another thing. It was just like, hey, sometimes as a pastor, you want to have that Superman complex of like, I could do it all. And you just can't be that. I mean, you're not Superman. And so you don't need to try to control it all. You need to work within, your own limitations of the way God has wired you. And I think it's recognizing those things. And, once again, leaning into those weaknesses, knowing that that's the place. It's in the place of your weakness that God shines his strength most clearly. So
that's so great. This has been such a good conversation. I hope maybe we can do it again. Before we close, though, I'd love to hear if there's a book that you would recommend to young pastors, or like a book that you just enjoyed reading recently.
For me, I would say On Pastoring by H.B. Charles Jr. I remember reading that in seminary, and it was just a very clear, cut and dry book that dealt with the aspects of pastoral ministry that a lot of which I've still been able to, it's given me things to think about even today, that I still put into practice. But yeah, On Pastoring by H.B. Charles is one I would highly recommend to anybody going into ministry.
Cool. Brandon?
My first one is, I've got two. My first one is, Reformed Pastor, or by Richard Baxter. I would say it's not necessarily about Calvinism, if people jump into that, but it's such a good book. There's a lot of things, eat the meat, spit out the bones, but there's a lot of just really practical things that Baxter talks about. And there's another one I just read. My Kindle app is not working well. At Your Best by Carrie Newhoff. It is a time management book, but it's fantastic. So I would say Baxter's Reformed Pastor and Carrie Newhoff's At Your Best have been my two favorite over the past couple of years.
Mine would be The Master Plan of Evangelism by Robert Coleman. I've read it so many times now. Every discipleship book I ever read is basically built upon that one. You know how like every fantasy book is Lord of the Rings repackaged? Every discipleship book is essentially getting at the master plan of evangelism. And if you can attack it, ministry from that angle, understanding that the methods need to mirror that of Jesus instead of just trying to jump into a 21st century pragmatic approach to ministry. If you can get that through your head earlier rather than later, it can save you a lot of frustration. And Coleman does it in not a lot of pages. It's a very accessible book. And it strikes me, he wrote that in 1962. And, it reads like it was written yesterday about methods. And so just getting back to the way of Jesus and using his model.
Yeah. There are several books, but I think one that has been most and personally impactful to me, just in my own life, as a father and as a husband and those types of things, which are obviously are critically important to your calling. I think we've talked a little bit about that anyway. But Kent Hughes's book, The Discipline of a Godly Man, is a great kind of classic book on spiritual disciplines, but specifically targeted, obviously to men and their role as a father, as a husband, and it's just been very impactful in my life. I've come back to it several times. Have led many of our men in our church actually to read it together. We did a group not too long ago and had about 18 men read it all together and discuss it. So it's just a great book.
It's great. Well, thank you guys so much. I agree with Beth. We got to have a do-over sometime.
Yeah.